The Beyond the Fame podcast is fed by Lido Pizza. Lido Pizza never cuts corners. For menu and locations, visit LidoPizza.com. This month's programming is sponsored by Signature Theater, presenting the DC premiere of the untitled, unauthorized Hunter S. Thompson musical. Follow the godfather of gonzo journalism as he barrels through American history in this critically acclaimed new rock musical now through July 13th. Buy tickets now at sigtheater.org. And of course, this podcast would not be possible without our longtime title sponsor, the Hollywood Casino at Charlestown Races in West Virginia. Upcoming featured entertainment includes Kevin James adding a second show June 7th and Band of Horses June 14th. Details and tickets at HollywoodCasinoCharlestown.com. Must be 21 to enter the casino floor and attend a show. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER. Welcome to the newest episode of Beyond the Fame with Jason Fraley. I'm your host, Jason Fraley, picking the brains of the top filmmakers, musicians, and artists of our time. Another Tony season is in the books, so who better to have on today's podcast than one of the greatest Broadway producers ever? Jeffrey Seller joined me to discuss his new memoir, Theater Kid, chronicling his journey to produce 4 Best Musical winners with Rent, Avenue Q, In the Heights, and Hamilton, all while democratizing theater going by inventing rush and lottery tickets for all to enjoy. Be sure to stick around until the end of the interview for a friendly game of Broadway versus Hollywood savants, quizzing each other on what won Tonys and Oscars throughout history. Hey, Jeffrey Seller, hey, thank you so much for joining the show today.
Jason, I'm so happy to be here with you. Talking about Broadway and my memoir, Theater Kid.
Yes, it's called Theater Kid, available now. It's going to be a bestseller because you are Jeffrey Seller, so it's got to be a bestseller. Before we dive into the book itself, I did want to get your thoughts on this year's Tony Awards. It's Tony season.
Well, you know what? You know what the headline is? We had 13 eligible Best Musicals in this season. And that is an outstanding, extraordinary number of new musicals. I'm going to give you a point of comparison. The year before I produced Rent, in 1996, there were only 9 million or a few less attendees on Broadway, and they only had 2 nominees for Best Musical because that's all that had been produced. There were no other possibilities.
Wow.
Only 2 musicals were eligible, and one of them was a review with songs by Leiber and Stoller called Smokey Joe's Cafe.
Wow.
Good show. And Sunset Boulevard was the other musical that year. It won Best Score and Best Book by default.
Whoa.
And then we come with Rent the following year. And now just keep going forward 29 years. And we have 13 new musicals on Broadway. And I have to say, this is a pretty great crop. I loved Maybe Happy Ending. I laughed my tuchus off at Death Becomes Her. And I had enormous respect for the wit and tone and flavor of Dead Outlaw and Operation Mincemeat. And I'm going to go see Buena Vista Social Club this weekend.
Awesome. Yes, it was our Wim Wenders documentary back in the day, the movie version. So, well, awesome. Yeah. Well, I wanted to just briefly thank you at the top, get your thoughts on this year's crop of musicals that were nominated. But because you're the expert, as we're about to dive into, so yeah, your shows. I want to remind folks the reason you're writing this memoir, and we all should read it, Theater Kid, because your shows have won a total of 22 Tony Awards over the years, and your shows have been seen by over 43 million theater goers. So a lot of that resurgence that you're talking about of not many nominees to all these nominees, a lot of that is thanks to you, my friend. So hats off on that alone. Why was now the right time to publish it? Are you looking like, 20th anniversary of In the Heights, 10th anniversary of Hamilton, or do you not even calculate that? It's just it just came about organically.
Yes, these a book of this depth for me, a book of this importance for me, it came out when it was done. I did not in any way strategize a time period. I wrote the book for my own catharsis, for my own journey to ask, why am I here? What have I done? And where am I going? And I wrote it without any expectation of who might ultimately become the reader.
Mm.
Um, and it was only after I wrote it that then I started to put the wheels in motion with agents and publishers, and then ultimately publishing dates. The only other thing I'll say about the timing is when my publisher Simon and Schuster asked me, "Do you want to go in the spring or the fall of 2025?" I said, I think if we go in the spring, it's a fun time because it is Tony time. And in many ways, this book is also about, amongst many other things, my love for the Tony Awards, both as a theater kid watching them on my couch in Oak Park, Michigan, uh, as a college kid, as a young kid in New York, and of course, as a competitor for the Tony Awards for all of my musicals from Rent through Hamilton.
Awesome, awesome. Well, we invite everyone to pick it up and read it. And in this interview, folks, we're going to touch on some of the highlights that obviously you're covering in the book. But you have to pick up the book for read the whole thing. There's so much more than we'll get into. But we're going to try to be the pebble across the pond at some of the highlights here. So you mentioned when you were a theater kid growing up. So you're born in Oak Park, Michigan, in '64. So that's the year of My Fair Lady and Mary Poppins. And so you were born for this, baby. um,
No,
um,
I'm going to correct you because that's the kind of theater kid I am in terms of my own knowledge of musicals. Though it is the year of those two things for movie musicals,
mhm.
it is the year of Fiddler on the Roof and Hello Dolly for
On
Broadway
stage.
musicals.
Ah,
So a very good year and a very competitive year for producers Hal Prince, who had produced Fiddler on the Roof,
yeah.
and David Merrick, who had produced Hello Dolly.
I love it. Yeah. So stage and screen, a lot of great musicals were bubbling to the surface. The year that you dropped onto this planet, and the rest of us are forever grateful for that. But my question is, what musicals did you love growing up? Did you listen to cast albums at home, or did you go to the movies to watch the music, or did you even venture to Broadway ever?
Oh, yeah, yeah, yeah. When I was in eighth grade and I had started doing community theater and was in a lot of plays, my eighth grade librarian, who was Mrs. Finn, and she wore these cool blue jean skirts and she had feathery hair and she always wore these blue tinted glasses. And she said, "You got to go see this new musical that's at the Fisher Theater, which is the touring house in Detroit, called Shenandoah, because there's two kids in it who are your age."
Whoa.
And I went home and told my parents, and of course, we could not afford for our family to go see that for four people to get tickets. But my mom said to my dad, "Take your son," and we were able to buy two $10 tickets to sit in the balcony, and it was a revelation. The power of the singing, and the lead was John Raitt, who was playing the role originated by John Cullum on Broadway. And John Raitt was one of the biggest stars of Broadway in the 1950s, having starred in The Pajama Game and Carousel.
Yeah.
And right after that, someone said we should go see this show called Pippin. And I didn't even know what that word meant. It didn't seem, was that a noun? Was that an adjective? Oh, it's a proper noun. It's the name
Yeah.
of some prince. Didn't know anything about it. And of course,
Not Michael Jordan's teammate. Long before
yeah,
that.
right. Not Scotty. And it's a middle-aged story of a king and his son, and how this young prince is trying to figure out his purpose in life, right?
Mm,
His corner of the sky.
mm.
But here's the thing: it was a musical about something that took place in the Middle Ages, but it was a contemporary musical in the way that it was told, because it was a Bob Fosse production and it was told by a troupe of actor dancers who were sinewy and sexy and fun. And it had this amazing leading player. And it's a story of yesterday, but it's told through the vocabulary of Bob Fosse. And the sets are made of cool ropes and it employs magic and a score that sounds a heck of a lot more like Carly Simon or James Taylor than Rodgers and Hammerstein.
Right.
And I knew at that moment, I was like, oh, that's what a musical can be.
Hmm.
And then cut a month later, and a chorus line comes to town. And that changed my life forever.
Yeah.
Because when I saw those 17 dancers wearing shorts, leotards, sweatpants, tank tops, occupy that stage, no sets,
Yeah.
and pour out their hearts and their yearnings and their hopes and their dreams and their sadnesses and their insecurities and their shame. Shame about parents fathers who cheat on their mothers, fathers who are distant and not available, young boys who feel like they're gay and they're afraid of what that means. I was like, holy moly, you can do a musical about real people today with real concerns.
Yeah.
And you know what? A Chorus Line was a contemporary musical that was today with a musical score that was a little bit today. It was certainly was more contemporary than a
Yeah.
Rodgers and Hammerstein score. The next contemporary musical was Rent in 1996. It
Yeah.
took 20 years to get from A Chorus Line to Rent.
Wow. And I can't wait to go into your creation of that and meeting Jonathan Larson and the rest. But I guess we should fill in the gap there. That's what you're watching growing up, and then you go to University of Michigan, graduate in '86, right?
Yeah.
So you were a Wolverine, but did you work on any college productions there?
I was doing, I was multitasking my brains out in college. While I was taking theater classes and getting a poli-sci degree, I was in shows freshman and sophomore year. Then I started directing shows like Grease and Anything Goes. Then
Mhm.
I started directing for the Children's Theater in Ann Arbor. I was the drama counselor for the summer camp in Oakland County, Michigan, called Camp Tamarack, working with 14-year-olds every single summer. And I was making shows with my then best friend, Andrew Lippa, who became a great composer lyricist unto himself, doing The Wild Party and The Addams Family and Big Fish and John and Jen. And it was back then that I said to Andrew, hey, you know how to play piano and you like musicals, you should write a musical. And we were working on that. So it was in college that I discovered, oh, I'm a producer director. And the problem was I was also in despair because I was in Ann Arbor, Michigan.
Right.
I was a poor kid from Oak Park, Michigan, and I had absolutely no idea how I could possibly get from the crummy neighborhood I grew up in that the kids called cardboard villages because the houses were made of tar shingles
Mm.
instead of bricks to Broadway. And I have this distinct memory of being in my backyard and I'm on one of those like, remember those frayed like lawn chairs that are made of like that weird,
Yeah.
uncomfortable, that plastic that sticks to your skin when you're,
Yeah. Oh, absolutely.
yeah. So I'm sitting on one of those frayed lawn chairs and I'm listening to Sunday in the Park with George and the Act One finale Sunday is just making the hair on my arm stand up. And I'm like, it's glorious. And I'm thinking, how am I going to get there? I'm never going to get from here in this frayed lawn chair to there. And you know what I did? I put one foot in front of the other. I know it's a cliche, but I did all those shows in college, and then I got myself to New York, and I got my first job.
Yeah, so at that time, you're focusing in, want to be a theater producer and director. And you get to New York, you wear a couple hats in the beginning, right? Publicist, booking agent, you're doing multiple
Yeah,
things,
right.
right?
You do what you can do. So I find my first job in PR because I had a lot of experience writing press releases. And I also used to write articles for the Michigan Daily and the Ann Arbor News. So I get a job in press and I
Right.
do that for 10 months. And then I get a job at the great producers, Barry and Fran Weissler's office. And I wind up working in their booking division, which means I'm helping to plan the tours of Joel Grey in Cabaret and
Wow.
Robert Goulet in South Pacific and Topol and Fiddler on the Roof. And
Wow.
those are the tours we're sending to cities all over America, from Sacramento and Denver to Columbus and Charlotte, North Carolina. Um, and while I'm working from 10 to 7 every day at the Weislers, I'm also developing and producing shows with my friends at night.
Wow. And when did one of those friends become when did you meet your eventual business partner there, Kevin McCollum? Because you would do
I
many of these together.
Yeah. After I'd been working at the Weislers for 3.5 years, I was a booker who wanted to be a producer, but I was afraid to leave. Why? I needed to make my guaranteed student loan payments every month. I
Yeah.
needed to pay the rent every month. Um, and I didn't have any net. So I'm afraid to leave, but I know that's not what I want.
Mhm.
And guess what? They wound up firing me. And then I met Kevin McCullum, and we became partners ultimately with our own booking agency, which paid the bills. So
Yeah.
we could continue to try to become producers.
Wow. You were scared to leave because you weren't sure how you were going to make the rent. And then lo and behold, that becomes Rent. You two co-produce Rent. And how does Jonathan Larson enter your life? This genius, meteoric, rest in peace, light that touched so many lives. How does he enter Is it a momentous moment, or is it more of a subtle, quiet encounter?
No, sir, it is a momentous moment. And of course, it's the most significant moment of my career.
Mhm.
And so in the same fall that I meet McCullum, who will become my business partner, my friend at the office, she's Barry's assistant, Beth. She says, "Hey, I'm going to this thing tonight. You want to go with me? I'm going to this show." And she shows me a flyer, and it says Boho Days, a rock monologue by Jonathan Larson.
Yeah.
And I go, "Rock monologue? Wow, that's cool. I mean, I've never heard of a rock monologue before. I guess it means it's going to be a one-man show told with rock music."
Yeah.
So I'm like, let's go. And we climb up this little performance space. And there on the stage is a piano, a bass, drum, guitar. And out comes this lanky, tall, curly-haired guy with big ears. And he attacks the piano ferociously. And what is he singing about? He's a 30-year-old composer of rock musicals that nobody wants to produce.
Yeah.
His agent won't even take his calls.
Yeah.
He lives in the fourth floor walk-up of an apartment on Greenwich Street where the bathtub really is in the kitchen, and he and his roommates have to share time to go take that shower or bath. Um, he's in a relationship with someone that feels safe, but he doesn't think it's the right thing. And he's asking, do I have the guts to break up and be lonely? Or do I just stay here and be safe? And then his best friend's offering him a job as a copywriter in an ad agency, which will pay the bills, get him a better apartment,
Yeah.
and get him health insurance. And the question is, what do I do? Do I go take that job or do I stick to my art and what I love? And
Hmm.
I'm watching this show and I'm thinking, I've never met this man in my life, but he wrote this show for me.
Yeah.
He wrote it for all of us.
Yeah.
And of course, as your listeners may know, the theme that he keeps returning to in his head during the show is that it's his 30th birthday. And he
Mhm.
feels like his head is going to explode. And he
Yeah.
hears this tick, tick, boom.
Boom. Yeah.
Um, so after that show, I wrote him a letter saying, "My name is Jeffrey Seller, and I want to produce your musicals." And so help me God, on the very day that I was being fired from the Weisler office, I am in the conference room, and my supervisor comes in with a little envelope and says, "You don't belong here. You want to be a producer, not a booker, so it's time for you to go." And I say, "Oh," and my heart sinks and my blood boils a little, and I feel that instant sense of panic and shame. But I also say, so I guess, so it was the day after my 26th birthday. And I said, "So do you want me to leave on Friday?" And she said, "No, I want you to leave now."
Wow.
And hands me my 2-week severance. Now, at the same time that's happening, that all call intercom comes over the entire office
Mhm.
and they say, Jeffrey Seller, Jonathan Larson on line 3.
Nice.
So when I went home, I called him. I said, Hi, this is Jeffrey Seller. He said, How are you? I said, I don't know. I was just fired. He said, Is that a good thing or a bad thing? And I said, If I am to believe anything from your amazing show, Boho Days, it's got to be a good thing. And that was the beginning of our professional friendship in the fall of 1990.
Wow. What a great story. One door closes and another wild door is for the rest of your career is about to open all simultaneously there. I love that story. Thank you. All right. So I guess it does its first stage reading at what, New York Theater Workshop in March of 93. Is that right? So I
Yes,
always thought it
yeah.
was interesting that here on the East Coast, 93, you guys are putting together Rent. West Coast, 93, Jonathan Demme's doing Philadelphia. Things are changing a little more slowly. But, we're just off the heels of the AIDS epidemic. Rent's diving into that some, along with a million other boho themes. You guys are tackling subjects sort of, I mean, they're of our time, but they're way ahead of the time in terms of, like 2 decades before marriage equality Supreme Court in 2015. You're really starting to shove us in that direction towards equality as best you can. Talk about just being on the precipice of that. Like, are you realizing that you're capturing your now, but do you know you're being revolutionaries in that?
No. All we're trying to do is make a good musical.
Yeah.
All I'm trying to do is make something that surprises me, that pricks my ear in a whole new way, um, and that is enthralling.
Yeah.
And that's what we tried to do with Rent. But what I was aware of, keenly aware of, was that this show represented my theatrical values, which
Hmm.
were completely aligned with Jonathan's, who said, I want to make musicals with our stories, with our music, with our characters, meaning people like us.
Right.
And that's what Rent was in portraying this wonderful made family with straight people, gay people, lesbians, trans people, people suffering from drug addiction, and people trying to have a good time amidst a world that seems to be ripping apart at the seams, that
Yeah.
seems to be, if I can use the verb, rent.
Nice. Yeah. It captured that time and place perfectly. I mean, you can throw it on and it's we're living in America at the end of the millennium. Like it's a perfect time capsule of that time. Do you have a personal favorite song? Because it's unbelievable. I mean, Seasons of Love comes to mind, or What You Own I just mentioned, or La Vie Boheme. There's so many huge ones on Glory. I could go on and on, but do you have a personal favorite that all these years later still gives you goosebumps?
Well, it is true that I'm sure there aren't too many of us who have not at some point heard Seasons of Love played at a
Yeah.
wedding.
Yeah.
I've also heard Seasons of Love, of course, played at a lot of bar mitzvahs. But my personal favorite has always been I'll Cover You,
Oh God, with
which
Angel, I'm crying already thinking about it.
it's the most beautiful love song. And to Jonathan's ingenious credit, it's the perfect metaphor in which the notion of covering someone with your love is present, but also because Collins had his jacket stolen,
Mhm.
it's Angel actually literally buying him a new coat.
Mhm.
So he is saying, I'll cover you both with a new coat and with my love.
Wow, that is so powerful. And folks, you will read this cover to cover when you're reading about all this in the book. Wow, thank you for that. But yeah, we've had Adam Pascal and Dina Menzel on here, and I'm putting that cast together must have been cool. So check that out in our archive, folks. We can't go the whole interview on Rent because there's so many other shows to get to, but I do, maybe one more on it. I do want to go into the night. And sorry to bring it back to a sad moment, but when Jonathan passes away, is it the night before the off-Broadway premiere in '96? Is that right?
Well, yeah. Yeah, we had a like electric dress rehearsal on January 25th.
Mhm.
family and friends were in the audience. The theater was filled with 199 people whooping and hollering. They were friends and family, so they were a subjective audience, no doubt. But it was certainly a vision of the show coming to life
Mm.
in all of its glory and color and rhythm and depth and beauty. But Jonathan had been to the hospital twice in the last 2 weeks. They thought maybe he had food poisoning, the flu, and he went home from that rehearsal after his first interview ever with the New York Times reporter to do a feature about the show. And the feature was going to be about La Boheme, premiering in Milan in 1896 and Rent premiering in New York in 1996. It was the
Wow.
100th anniversary
A
of La Boheme.
century later. Wow.
And after Jonathan did that interview with New York Times reporter Anthony Tomasini, he went home not feeling well still, but certainly enthused by that rehearsal. And he put on the tea kettle and he collapsed of an aortic aneurysm
Mm.
and died on the spot. So that technically was the early morning of the day of our first preview of Rent at New York Theater Workshop.
Oh God. How do you get out there on I mean, all the tears must have been flowing, but you're dedicating yourself with each performance from that point forward to Jonathan.
You know, his beloved parents, Alan and Larson, lived in New Mexico, and they were, of course, on the first flight out on that morning. And the day of the um, first preview, instead of doing the normal public performance, um, Jim Nicola, the artistic director of New York Theater Workshop, and we decided they're just going to sing the show from chairs. The cast is too rattled to do the whole show. It won't be safe. And we'll do it for his family and friends. It will like suddenly, the night before was a dress rehearsal, and the next night was a memorial service.
Oh
It
God.
was grim and gut-wrenching.
Mm.
And here's what happened that night. The cast came out and sat down at the two tables that everyone knows from Rent, and they just started doing the show. And with every passing number, their commitment and enthusiasm to the words and the music got deeper. By intermission, I heard a man say about those characters, I just want to hang out with those people.
Hmm.
And I thought, we're on the right track. But then right there at intermission, that's when I had to meet. Kevin and I went to say hello to his parents. What an awful thing that is for the parents. And I was bewildered and I thought, I don't know what to say, but we go over and we greeted them and told them how sad we were. And his dad and mom said, Johnny talked about you all the time, and you have one thing you must do. Get this show on.
Yeah.
And that was our guiding light.
Wow.
Get this show on.
And you did. It opens on Broadway in 96 and becomes a smash and one of my personal and many people's personal all-time favorite musicals, nominated for 10 Tonys, winning four, including top prize Best Musical. Um, and around this time, you do something really cool for all of us theater goers, theater lovers. You and Kevin, of course, together, you're inventing Broadway's first rush ticket idea. Go into you're riding high. You've made it. You finally, wow, I've made it. You've dreamed of being a musical producer, and now finally, boom, we have this Tony-winning smash, blockbuster. Why do you want to give back and help people that maybe can't afford to get in see this life-changing thing?
Well, we're producing Rent on Broadway when I'm 31 years old. A year before Rent opens on Broadway, I can't even afford a full price ticket to a Broadway show.
Yeah.
Uh, I'm like all the people we're doing it for. I'm a young New Yorker. And so we knew from the start, Kevin and I, that we had to have cheap seats. And then at some point, the idea comes up, well, what if we take the cheap seats and we do the first two rows of the orchestra instead of the rear of the balcony?
Yeah,
And
give them the
that
best seats.
enthusiasm
Yeah.
that those theater goers express
Yeah.
will just be a wave that goes all the way to the back of the theater.
Hell yeah.
And we make a policy. It's $20 cash only, 2 hours before the performance at the box office. And we thought if we do that, then we'll get a line every day in front of the box office.
Very smart.
That will be a great marketing tool and image. And lo and behold, that's what we do. And it became its own phenomenon in that 1 year later, as Rent is the box office sensation that it becomes, there are three lines on Friday nights in the summer, which is the line for the Friday night show, the line for the Saturday matinee show, and the
Wow.
line for the Saturday night show. And kids are sleeping over
Yeah.
on kind of derelict 41st Street before the New York Times has moved in down the block
Yeah.
and some fancy steakhouse.
Wow.
So we're worried. We're like, someone's going to get hurt. And we
Yeah.
cannot be responsible if these kids are sleeping overnight. So what we do is then we take the line and convert it to the lottery. And for the entire run of Rent, we do the lottery by putting your name in the hat, and we would do the
Yeah.
lottery at 6 o'clock. And that way, that becomes more democratic or more accessible because you don't have to come stand in line all day. You can go to work and show up. I
Yeah.
want to point out one other thing. All the former, before Rent, all those discounts were like for college students, but we were like, lots of people don't have money. You don't have money when you get to New York and you're 22. You don't have money sometimes if you're 65. So
Yeah.
it's for everybody. And the greatest thrill for me is to see how almost every Broadway show after that, particularly the musicals, would have a lottery.
Yeah.
And at some point, it even lands at the Metropolitan Opera, where they would have a discounted ticket where you could sit in the back of the orchestra section for like $20.
I love that. Do you know how many people have seen Broadway shows because of this idea of yours? This you democratized it, you made it. I mean, let's face it, you couldn't do a show called Rent and the opening number and everything it represents and then only let wealthy people see it. You know what I mean? Like so they're of a piece in my mind of allowing everyone to go see your shows. So thank you so much for all of us being able to go see so many shows. That's your idea.
And you could still go see Hamilton today for $10 by entering our digital. Eventually, our lottery went digital, and you can do that with our digital lottery.
It's life changing. Thank you so much on behalf of every Broadway fan. Great. Well, you mentioned Hamilton, but before we get to that, and even before In the Heights, you right after Rent, I guess we should go into Avenue Q because that comes out in '03, nominated for 6 Tonys, winning 3, including Best Musical. So that's you've won 2 Best Musicals at that point. How do you
Yeah.
get into this zany idea of puppets? And I mean, it's unlike anything else that we had seen, really. How does that idea even come about?
Well, I want to say again, what do I want to experience both as a producer and as a theater goer? I want to be surprised. And Avenue Q was the brainchild of two ingenious young talents who met up and started work at the BMI Musical Theater Workshop, Jeff Marks and Bobby Lopez.
Hmm.
And they had this idea to do an adult version, sometimes an R-rated version of Sesame Street. And instead of it being about kids, it's about young adults in New York trying to figure out what they're doing with their lives. In its own funny way, it was not unlike Rent. But they did another little workshop of a review of some songs with some puppets all the way back in 2000. And when I went to see this thing in a small church under the Citicorp building, I literally fell off my chair laughing when I heard, if you were gay, that'd be okay. I mean, 'cause hey, I'd like you anyway. And the fact that one puppet was singing it to another, it was unlike anything I'd ever seen before. It was a parody of Sesame Street, but in doing its own parody, but sticking true to its intent,
Yeah,
which
right,
is what is my purpose in life.
right.
It's not just satire, it's actually a sincere book musical that happens to be hysterically funny.
Absolutely. All right. Yeah. So Avenue Q is huge, and you know your second best musical win. And thank you for singing one of the puppet songs. That's hilarious. People are probably cracking up listening to you singing your version. uh, but yeah, so that now you have two best musicals on your shelf. And a third comes pretty short, a few years later when you produce In the Heights, Lin-Manuel Miranda, 2008. It's nominated for 13 Tonys, winning four, including Best Musical. So that's your third. How do you meet this, unknown at the time kid out of Washington Heights? How do you see the diamond in the rough, or what? It's hard to almost imagine. We all know Lin-Manuel Miranda, but what was he like in the beginning? What did you see in him in this In the Heights idea that made you say, "Oh gosh, we have another Jonathan Larson style mastermind here"?
Well, Lynn was a substitute teacher at Hunter High School when I met him, and he was in his early 20s.
Mm.
Um, and he had smartly connected with director Thomas Kail, and they were starting to make shows in the basement of the drama bookshop.
Wow.
And Lynn had made In the Heights when he was a sophomore at Wesleyan. It was his sophomore project, and he directed it, and it was a one act. And uh, Tommy said to him, "Why don't you keep working on it? I think we can make a two-act musical." And Tommy would give him these amazing writing assignments, and they made a two-act musical out of it. And then they got some friends together to do a reading, and that was when my business partner Kevin McCullum heard about it and saw a very, very early reading of it. And at that reading, Lynn was now starting to play the narrator, Usnavi. And
I love
Kevin
that,
came
by the
back.
way. U.S. Navy,
Yeah,
Usnavi.
exactly. Yeah, nice, maybe. And uh, Kevin says, "We're doing this show." And then we start working on it and connect Lynn to a terrific playwright named Chiara Hudas, who starts working with him on the book because he wants a book writer.
Mm,
And the first time we do a staged reading where the actors are just singing it from music stands, I'm seeing it for the first time. And when Lynn comes out and envelops us with his warm Caribbean rap,
yeah.
lights up on Washington Heights at the break of day, um, I'm enamored. I've never heard rap sound that way, sound so inviting. And
Right.
but then something even more amazing happens, which is as he's rapping, a Broadway chorus joins him singing In the Heights. I
Yeah.
wake up and
I
start my day.
flip the lights and start my day. That whole thing.
It's once again, I've never heard anything on Broadway sound like that before.
Yeah.
This juxtaposition of rap with choral music.
Yeah.
And I know I'm in the presence of another generational talent.
Mhm.
And I want to add something. Lynn writes about his neighborhood, about the people he grew up with, about his aunts, his uncles, his
Mhm.
abuela.
Abuela.
Where does he get that idea? From seeing Rent as a high school senior with his girlfriend. And he
Exactly.
goes to see Rent on Broadway. And when he sees Rent, he says, "Oh, I can write a musical about my neighborhood, about my friends and family, about with our music." So In the Heights stands on the shoulders of Rent.
It does. And of course, when Lin-Manuel makes his movie directorial debut, he does Tick Tick Boom because, he's honoring Jonathan Larson, who kicked this all off for him.
How
And
beautiful is that?
there's this deeper, profound thing you just touched on there is your shows, just like Rent did for Lynn to do in the Heights, and now Lynn is doing for other people. Like it's inspiring people. Tell the stories of where you're from with your music. And he does it with
Yes.
hip hop, and Jonathan did it with the rock stuff. But yeah, like, and so many great musicals are going to come from different pockets of the country, of the world, telling your tale. That's the important thing, right? Tell a tale from where you're from with your music.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
And one of the things that's so rewarding for me is to see how these doors opened on Broadway, beginning with Rent, that lead to all kinds of wonderful new works from Avenue Q and In the Heights to shows that I never produced, like Next to Normal and Dear Evan Hansen.
Right.
These contemporary musicals that are illuminating what it's like to be alive now and struggle with today's issues.
Absolutely, absolutely. And shout out, we're a Washington D.C., Maryland area show, and so shout out Dear Evan Hansen. I saw it down at Arena Stage before it went to Broadway, so yeah, some good theater coming out of this area. In fact, I'll tie it back into where we're going next, Hamilton, because Thomas Kail is from down here, and he's come on this show, and he was talking about the origins of Hamilton. I want to see where you enter this whole timeline here, but. He said that Lin-Manuel Miranda sent him a G chat saying, "Hey, I'm reading this Ron Chernow autobiography on Alexander Hamilton," and they were all kind of joking, but Lin's being dead serious. Where do they bring you into the process?
Well, as you know, so Lynn reads this on his 1 week vacation in Mexico with his girlfriend and then wife Vanessa, where he's taking a week off from playing Usnavi.
Mm.
And it just says a lot about Lynn's intellectual heft that he takes like this 900-page biography with.
This is how I'm gonna unwind on the beach.
Yeah, right, with Alexander Hamilton. And of course, then he says, well, this is obviously a hip hop musical. And he figures, oh, well, someone's already probably done it. I'm like, guess what? No one else had done it.
No,
But
no one had
yeah,
thought to do it.
yeah, right, exactly. But uh, everybody, including me, hears that a couple months later, in the spring of 2009, Lynn's invited to a poetry slam at the White House
Hmm.
in the early months of the Obama administration. So he goes down there and says, "I'm going to do my song, Alexander Hamilton, who is a hip hop artist."
I
And
believe the exact line is "You laugh," but
that's
that's on
right.
YouTube.
But
Everybody look it up.
he
Yeah, yeah.
says he's going to do rap Alexander Hamilton. The
Yeah.
audience laughs with a little bit of derision.
Yeah, like how is this possible? Yeah.
And by the end of that number, of course, they're cheering him and standing up,
He gets them
including,
snapping. Remember, he goes, "How does a bastard
oh, right.
orphan son?"
Yeah.
And then the
Yeah,
room
exactly.
start, including the Obamas. There,
Of
everyone's
course.
getting into it.
Yeah. And he says it's his next musical, but in fact, the only song he's written at that point is, in fact, Alexander Hamilton. But he keeps working. And then it is Thomas Kail's great idea to try to get him working faster. So Tommy says to him, let's go book a night at Jazz at Lincoln Center. And we'll just do a cabaret and we'll try. And Tommy says, if you could do one song a month, next January, we'll do the whole show
Wow.
or the whole act. We'll do act one. And
And is Lackamore brought in at that point?
yeah, I
Okay.
think so.
Okay.
Yes. And then, so the three of them do this cabaret at Jazz at Lincoln Center in January of 2012. And it's a bunch of songs from Act One. And it's, by the way, and it's a few other songs that Lynn's written that they need to fill out the evening. And, after that, I write Tommy and Lynn a letter saying, I know you want to make a concept album and I'll support anything you want, but this is also a musical. And
Hell
of
yeah.
course, that was Tommy's plan from day one to prove to Lynn that this is a book musical.
Yeah.
And in the same way I wrote Jonathan Larson a letter saying, I want to produce your musicals, after that evening, I wrote to Lynn and Tommy saying, I want to produce Hamilton. Or more important, uh, I would love to do it. If you want to have me, I will be your cheerleader. I will be your nurturer. I will be your salesman.
Right.
And let's go have some fun with this.
Whatever capacity, you just wanted to be along for that ride. Yeah,
You bet.
absolutely. All right, so they're starting to put the music together then. So then go into the decision with the casting. This isn't 1776 and all of our all-white founding fathers. We're gonna flip it. We're gonna have diverse casting. We're gonna bring in Leslie Odom Jr. as Aaron Burr, the damn fool to shine. We're gonna have Philippa Sue, Renee Elise Goldsberry, who else? Christopher Jackson, Daveed
Yeah.
Diggs. God, so many were going to be famous in their own right. But yeah, talk about that decision. Are you in on that idea, or was that sort of there from the very beginning? Or
Yeah, I have to tell you, that is not a political decision.
yeah,
That is an artistic decision,
hell
which
yeah.
is that Lynn is writing rap music for
Hmm.
George Washington and
Right,
Thomas Jefferson.
right,
And we need to go to the source. And
right.
rap is a black art form.
Yeah,
God bless Eminem. He's a brilliant artist and
sure.
he applied it beautifully, but it's a black art form.
Yeah,
So you need to have black people interpret it.
absolutely.
So in our play, it only made sense that George Washington was black
Yeah.
and Thomas Jefferson was black. And and then we wind up with what we call a cast that is doing a story of America yesterday with what looks like America today.
Yep.
America today presents America yesterday. So you wind up with a Puerto Rican American in Lynn and a Chinese American in Pippa and Black Americans and Renee and Leslie and David and Chris and
And that
every
allows
cast.
for the commentary, like immigrants, we get it done. Like it allows
Exactly.
social
Yeah.
commentary.
It's organic. And then it winds up making a wonderful political statement,
Hmm.
which is that this is a story for all of us.
Right. Absolutely. It is a story for all of us, and that's why I think it was such a smash. And thanks to your rush tickets, etc. Where everyone from all walks of life are able to go see this thing and earns a record, folks, breaking the record, 16 Tony nominations. It was the talk of the town nationwide, pop culture eruption. It wins 11, including best musical. So that's your fourth win of the top prize of shows you've produced. That's incredible. Again, it also gets the Pulitzer Prize for drama, right? 2016. And
Yes.
and down in our corner here in DC, usually the Kennedy Center Honors was like a life achievement award. This thing was so huge that they're like, get Lynn, get Thomas, get them all down here. We're gonna give them an instant Kennedy Center honor. Like I'd never seen that done before for a new show. That's how big this thing is. So yeah, I mean, at that point, I believe this was your first one, independent of McCullum, right?
Yes, sir.
I'm sure you write about that some in the book. So let me phrase it this way then. I don't want to say why did that partnership end, but how rewarding was it that you'd won three together, but then after that you go on and were able to arguably do your even biggest one. I mean, Hamilton, to be able to do that independently along with this great team, how rewarding was that for you personally in your trajectory?
I had 20 amazing years in partnership with Kevin McCullum. He was one of the most important and substantial relationships of my life.
Hmm.
And there is a moment for many of us, and it was for me in my late 40s, where I thought I'm probably about halfway through my career. And going forward, I think I don't want to ride a tandem bike anymore. I think I just want to be the final decision maker. I want to be the CEO. I
Yeah.
don't want to be the co-CEO. And so before Hamilton even did that concert at Jazz at Lincoln Center, we made our parting. And I thought, you know what? I'll make my decisions and I'll live by the consequences, the successes and the failures, the good ideas and the bad ideas.
Hmm.
Um, so that's what led me to say, I need to now be my own CEO. And it was just my luck and timing that Hamilton was the next show, and it went very well,
To say the least, yes.
to say the least.
Arguably the biggest slash greatest, because that's not there's not those two aren't don't always go hand in hand, the acclaim and popularity, but in this case it was a perfect storm. It will stand the test of time. Absolutely. Well, you've been more than generous with your time. So many great stories, folks, and this is just a teaser. There's so much more depth, I'm sure, in the book. You got to pick up Theater Kid. In the final seconds, as we wind this down, of all the shows you've done, of the ones we haven't mentioned, is there a show that holds a special place in your heart that wasn't one that took off like Rent or In the Heights or Avenue Q or Hamilton? Like, is there one? Is it Sting's The Last Ship? Is it the West Side Story revival? Is it? I don't know. I'll turn it to you. But is there one that you're like, you know what? It didn't achieve those heights, but damn, I'm damn proud of that one anyway.
Well, I'll tell you, I did West Side Story with Arthur Lawrence, the book writer and author of West Side Story in '09 through '11, 2009 to 2011. And that was the production in which Arthur had the sharks speak in their native language, which
Oh
I
wow.
thought gave so much dignity and humanness to the sharks. So I was very proud of that. And of course, for me, that was a life-changing experience because I actually got to be in the room with both Arthur Lawrence and on occasion Stephen Sondheim um, as we were making that. So who doesn't want to be in the room with two of the greatest
Yeah.
musical theater makers of the 20th century?
Yeah.
When I think about, the shows that I've always had a very soft spot, The Last Ship is a great example because I adored working with Sting.
Yeah.
And we worked for 4 years on his beautiful Last Ship. And, that man is such a consummate artist. songwriter, collaborator. If you make a meeting for 10 a.m., he is there at 9:45 every single time. And if you say this song doesn't work there, he delivers a new song the next day. And we were passionate about The Last Ship, and The Last Ship was poetic and beautiful
Mhm.
and painful because it did not find an audience.
Mm.
And one of the painful jobs of the producer is to do your best, fight for the show as hard as you can, and accept when the audience is saying no.
Wow.
And they say it with their action, and their action is not buying tickets. And you can't get anyone to buy a ticket they don't want to buy. It doesn't matter if you put a discount or anything. Um, and that's part of my job too.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
it's a painful part, but oh God, we can't end on that, Jason. You're going to have to
No, well,
lift.
you know what? I was
Yeah.
it made me sad too because Sting came to DC and I sat down with him. He came to National Theater, The Last Ship. And I believe everything you're saying about him being prepared because not only did he sit down for an interview, he brought his guitar and he was singing When the Last Ship Sailed. It was amazing. So folks, maybe that's an underrated one that you think you can do as good an artful job on stage as you want with a legend like Sting, but in the end the audience speaks, so it is what it is. But okay, yes, we can't end on that, you're right. But the whole point is it's the ups and downs though, right?
Why don't we end with a classic?
Yeah.
Because, you said sometimes the classics are not correlated with the most popular shows. And a
Mhm.
very good example of that, Sweeney Todd,
Mhm.
which in its original Broadway run in 1979 with Angela Lansbury, ran for less than 2 years,
Mhm.
won a boatload of Tony Awards, including Best Musical, and did not recoup. So if you are using the lingo of theater, the original production of Sweeney Todd was a technical flop. Now, of course, everybody would agree, and no one could argue otherwise. It is a masterpiece.
Oh
It is
yeah.
one of the best musicals ever written. I used to listen to that album in alternation with Evita when I was in high school nonstop. Um,
My friends.
and it's, of course, had many productions, and some of the more recent ones have become successful, including a very small one they did in what they called a pie shop at the Barrow Street Theater in New York. But about 6 years ago, my friends Tommy Kail and his friend Josh Groban came to me and said, "Hey, we're thinking about doing it. Would you join us?" And I said, "Well, yes, if you're doing it, Josh. But here's the question. There have been so many chamber pieces, ensemble pieces, Sweeney Todd's with 8 people, 9 people. The only way to do it again is to do the biggest production Broadway's had since the original. We got to go big."
Yeah.
So we did a big production of Sweeney Todd 2 years ago, and it was a miracle
Nice.
because it was a beautiful production, and the audience was going crazy for it. And I would wager to say it's the biggest hit Sweeney Todd ever experienced. We recouped the production costs, which at that point were $13 million.
Wow.
We made a profit for the investors, and we put on one of the best musicals ever.
I love it. That's so good to hear. And maybe I don't know, maybe it was there more familiarity after the Tim Burton movie? Like more people knew about it, or what do you think? Why do you think it had changed?
No, I think that people definitely had learned a lot about Sweeney Todd over the
Yeah.
ensuing 40 years
Yeah.
from its multiple productions and its Tim Burton movie.
Mhm.
Of course, and you cannot leave aside the fact that Josh Groban has an enormous audience.
Oh yeah.
And it's an audience that is well aligned with Broadway musicals. People that
Yeah.
like his show like Broadway musicals.
Yeah.
So Josh made an indelible, essential
Yeah.
contribution to our popularity and success. He was
But
great.
he's a massive talent, one of the best out there singers. Yeah, absolutely. It's an ironic, amazing image. I'm picturing him with the little, barber, the knife. You raise me up. so I can slit your throat. Worst prize in London. That's fantastic. You're right. That is a better note to end on. But although I actually do want to say you seem like a bit of a theater savant. Like I'm sort of a movie savant. You say a year, I can tell you what one, whatever. But you
Yeah.
seem like a theater savant. You know, when I said 64, your birth year, I was like, here's the movie winner. But you're like, no, it was here's what was on Broadway. Can you do that for pretty much any year or no?
Uh, I could do it for most years from
Really?
my birth on. Not every
Really?
year,
So
most
what was
years.
72?
Well, you're either going to get a little not was 72 the year of Follies and Two Gentlemen of Verona. It was something like Follies, Two Gentlemen of Verona, because 70 was Company. I think 71 was Follies. So 72 was actually probably a Little Night Music.
I'm gonna pull it up here because I'm telling you, I got the
I'm
movies in my
close. It's either,
year
I think
were
it's
Two
like,
Gentlemen of Verona and then A Little Night Music was 73. Wow. All right, hang on. 86.
oh, well, 86 is the year I graduate from Michigan, and The Mystery of Edwin Drood wins for Best Musical.
Damn, followed by Les Mis and Phantom. You're right. All right, 99.
Oh God. Okay, hang on. So 96 was Rent, 97 was Titanic, 98 was The Lion King.
Yeah.
So 99,
It's okay if you can't pull it.
is it Fosse?
Damn, yes, that is freaking good, folks. I had the list up, and I didn't want to chime in. And I'm gonna let that play so we can hear your wheels turn. That's incredible. All right, try me real fast. Throw out a year, any year, even before our birthday. Go old. I don't care. I'm going
Oh,
to go
okay,
movie.
great. 77.
Annie Hall, but Star Wars was the big. That was the big blockbuster.
Wow.
Yeah.
And do you know what won Best Musical in 77?
Oh, see, no, see, Broadway. I leave
Yeah,
that to
yeah.
you.
Okay,
You
I'll give
you
you.
give me that.
And I love it. Well, I love Annie Hall,
Yeah.
and Annie actually won for Best Musical.
Oh
Okay,
wow.
okay.
Oh yeah. All right.
81,
I like this game. You quiz me, and then you'll tell me what on Broadway. All right, give me a year.
81.
Well, Raiders of the Lost Ark was the big blockbuster, but
Yeah.
Chariots of Fire wins the
Oh, I love that.
yeah.
Dun 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 dun
All right,
dun.
Zebin, what was on Broadway?
Oh, well, 42nd Street wins after having opened so triumphantly in the summer of 1980. Yeah.
This is a fun game. We should have done this in the beginning. All right, give me one more year, and we'll close it up.
Okay. 90.
That's Dances with Wolves. Wins, but
Oh,
also the Scorsese does Goodfellas.
I know. It absolutely destroyed me to see Goodfellas lose to Dances with Wolves.
Well, because because Marty had gotten snubbed so many times before that. But Raging
Oh,
Bull
no, and
lost to
Goodfellas
Ordinary
is just
People, which
one.
is a good movie, but
Goodfellas is one of the
Taxi
greatest
Driver
movies.
lost to Rocky. Like he'd lost so many times leading up to that.
Yeah. But anyway, so what did I get? What year was that?
Oh,
90?
90. Yeah. So what was
Oh, yeah.
Broadway?
So that's the year that City of Angels beats Grand Hotel.
Wow. I want to be alone. That's what I think of with Grand Hotel. See, I'm movie guy, you're Broadway. This is fun. This is fun as hell. I could do this back and forth, but you've been generous with your time. Thank you so much. Everyone check out Theater Kid, available now. Jeffrey Seller. Thank you so much.
That was amazing.
Thanks so much for listening to Beyond the Fame with Jason Fraley. Our theme music is Scott Buckley's Clarion. Remember to give us a 5-star rating if you like what you hear. We'll see you next time.